And anti-Semitism is rising in America, and that is evident in no place more than in New York City. Another alarming set of statistics lay out the fact. Let's go to our senior U.S. correspondent, Mike Wagenheim, who joins us from New York. Mike, what sort of attacks are we talking about here?
The New York Police Department just released their monthly statistics, and they're not encouraging at all. In August, New York City saw 24 anti-Semitic hate crimes. Those are everything from verbal assaults to physical assaults, anything that's designated as a crime with an intent essentially to express hatred towards Jews. 24 in just the last month. That is compared to 11 from the same time period, August of 2021. That's 13 more this year compared to last year, a 118% increase. And Ariel, if that's not concerning enough, those numbers are pretty consistent this year. We're seeing a dramatic increase month by month in the number of hate crimes against Jews in New York City. Just last week, the New York Police Department announced it would be adding extra patrols in the Williamsburg section of Brooklyn here in New York. That is a very heavy Hasidic section of the city, which has seen an increase in attacks from everything from fists to fire extinguishers and spitting on the streets there. The ADL said last year in New York State, there were 416 anti-Semitic hate crimes. That number is already up by almost 200 this year and heading for an even larger increase. The Americans Against Anti-Semitism organization, Ariel, released a recent report saying that of the hate crimes it tracked in New York City dating back to 2018 that targeted Jews, of those 118 cases they looked at, only one resulted in a conviction and serious sentencing.
So you mentioned, Mike, 2018. I do want to ask you about how this compares to pre-pandemic data, because it may be the case that in 2021, the city was partly under lockdown. I don't remember the case in August exactly, but now things are, back at full force in New York. Is that how this rise in data is explained?
Partially so, but you got to understand as well, coming out of the lockdown and even in the waning days of the lockdown, the numbers were on the rise compared with pre-lockdown numbers that dramatically increased. Some of that can be explained by economic conditions, but others point to bail reform here in New York City specifically. A law was passed in the last year or so that basically does not allow for cash bail for suspects of nonviolent, very specific nonviolent crimes. And therefore, what critics of the system are saying is that these suspects are attacking Jews, and if it's anything short of essentially murder or something below that, they are released because they're not allowed to be held in exchange for cash bail. So they're turned back out onto the streets. Number one, they're committing offenses again. And number two, it's sending a message to other would-be attackers of Jewish people in the city that they're free to do so without any immediate consequences.
Mike, and it would be, of course, interesting to see what the response would be of those communities towards the end of this year, and how by Rosh Hashanah they regroup and assess how also they protect themselves, and of course what the NYPD decides to do. Thank you very much, Mike Wagenheim, for bringing us this disturbing data from New York today.